maybe. Hello, friends in Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube land. Welcome back to the next interview that we've got as part of our inaugural January 2023 roundtable here in Parent Tween Connection. I'm Clarissa Constantine. For anyone I haven't met, I'm the founder and CEO of Parent Tween Connection. And today I'm super excited to have a friend and colleague with me. Mel Peirce actually lives out in the Northeast, but she works with parents across the country and even around the world. So first, Mel, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have folks who are joining our Trusted Experts be with us. For those of you who don't know Trusted Experts, trusted means that they're background checked so that you know that they're safe to be around your kids. And experts means that they're really good at what they do. We've had, for all the folks who come into our Trusted Expert Network, they've had glowing testimonials from clientele. So Mel is definitely one of those folks. And today we're talking about anxious teens.
Yes.
Is there a teen today, and I mean this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but kind of not tongue-in-cheek. Do you think there's actually a teen today that doesn't deal with anxiety?
They're few and far between, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, there's just so much going on. I feel like they have so many things coming at them with what's going on with school, with the world in general. It's a lot.
It's a lot. There is a lot. And I think, especially, by the way, for y'all looking, if you see me looking over here, I'm making sure that we're live in our Facebook group so that if you have questions, you can ask them of Mel there. So if I'm with you, Mel, but that's what I'm doing over here.
It's all good.
Having been in the test prep world as long as I have, I've seen a lot of kids dealing with the test of the stress of the college admissions process. But it feels like even, post-pandemic, we're here January 2023. So most of us have returned to some variation of new normal. But a lot of us forget that our kids are dealing with a lot. So where do you want to start with this? This is a conversation we could have all day, every day for eternity, probably.
I know. So I think the best place to start, honestly, is really talking about what is happening physiologically, when they're experiencing anxiety. And so I think it just helps from a parenting standpoint to literally take it back a step and just understand what's going on. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to describe literally. I talk about the brain and I do it using animals. I just find that because I work with parents of kids of all ages, but I find that the animal analogy just makes it easier.
Absolutely.
And it also gives parents language so they can then use it to talk to their kids about it. So basically, I take the brain and I break it up into 3 areas. So back here, we have the monkey brain, which is the survival brain, right? That's the primal part of the brain that's in the back of the head, which is why I put my hand back here. That is born fully developed when we are born as babies. That part of the brain is fully developed.
Which makes sense because it's like the mammalian, survival instincts. That's where those live.
Right. And that's why it's important that comes fully developed, right from the start.
Sure.
And up here is the prefrontal cortex. Call that the wise owl. Okay. But the wise owl is the part of our brain where that's all the reasoning, the logic, the problem solving, the communication skills, as well as the ability to manage emotions all happens with our prefrontal cortex. And so downstairs brain, upstairs brain, which is another analogy, right? So if you imagine coming into a house, the house is fully all furnished, carpet, furniture, everything on the first floor. You go over to the stairs and they're plywood, and go upstairs in rafters. So basically, when our kids are little, this part, the prefrontal cortex, is totally under development. And then it goes through a complete remodel when they are teens. And so just knowing that, this is the part of their brain that manages all of that, is all in flux.
Right.
And in between the two, right, is something it's the amygdala, which I call the barking puppy.
I have 2 of those. They're outside my office for obvious reasons.
Exactly. So, but the purpose of the barking puppy is always on alert for danger. It's watching out, like to make sure. So that's when, if you walk up to a street and your child's with you and they go to step out and there's a car coming, you will automatically put your hand back, right? Without even thinking. That's that danger reflex. That's driven by the amygdala. And so with our kids, they are on the alert for danger. And
That makes sense.
right. And the puppy, when the puppy barks, right? Puppies bark at a lot of stuff, even when it's not really danger.
Yeah. Even the non-puppies, my 6-year-old puppies still bark at all the things.
Yeah. Right. And so, but when the puppy barks, the wise owl flies away. So that reasoning, all of that is gone.
Yeah.
And we are left with the monkey in charge. And the monkey only knows how to fight, flight, or freeze, which in our kids is fight back, to either shut down or withdraw, which we see a lot of, right? Or that freeze, which is that glazed over look that they get.
Yeah. Right.
That's the monkey in charge.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece, like just knowing like, okay, and that amygdala response, when that happens, also it gears up in us what's called our sympathetic nervous system. So that then has all these chemicals coursing through our body. That's that fight. So literally our legs get stronger and we get more stupid. I don't mean it like in a negative way, but our brain like shuts down and our body gears up to be able to fight or like run away, whatever it is. It's very physical.
Right.
And so when we start to understand as parents, like, okay, like literally, like they are in this response, we have to deal with that response before we're trying to deal with it. We got to get the wise owl back.
Right. Well, and the other thing that I know you and I have talked about, and a couple of our other speakers, throughout the month on the roundtable have talked about, the prefrontal cortex as it relates to their expertise. For anyone who hasn't heard any of the other conversations that we've had, I just want to put a little bit in that says, yes, it grows. Then it has this cool remodel, as you put it, during the teen years, but we don't actually get the final fencing and the beautiful lawn and landscaping and like everything done until they're like 25 or 30.
Right. It's true.
So like, it's not necessarily like a linear development process, but if they're only 15 or 16 right now, please know that that maybe like chronologically you could only be halfway there, which is terrifying. But I get that. But there's an aspect of like, if you recognize that that's like the last thing in the entire body physiologically to develop, it can give us a little bit more patience sometimes.
Correct. Right. And just literally knowing, okay, the monkey's in charge. Right. The monkey's in charge. Just don't deal with. Right. And so I think one of the secrets that I tell parents, like as parents, we tend to think the problem is the anxiety. Okay. And we need to solve so they're not getting anxious. And the secret to parenting through anxiety is not trying to get rid of the anxiety, but help our kids learn to navigate it.
That's like gold right there. That was worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
Right? Because it may never go away, but if we help them develop the skills to navigate it, I mean, that's a life skill.
It is a life skill. And this is where, and honestly, I mean, think about how many adults we see that don't really have that skill.
Right.
And so that ability to manage that anxiety and deal with it is a skill that we really want to teach our kids. We want to teach our teens, because that will help them be so much more successful in managing their life.
Right. I think there's also a point to be made that like for kids who do deal with mental illness, mental health challenges, like there is absolutely an appropriate aspect of psychotherapy, and depending, some medications, whatever, like that's for the doctors to decide. But as you're talking about, number one, what the parents can do, how the parents can engage differently, and then the tools that they can use. I don't know that there's any one thing that's a panacea, but why wouldn't we try as many things as we can to support our kids? So I know one of the things that you've talked about is like mistakes that parents make. And I'm guessing it's something about trying to address the wise owl without acknowledging that the barking puppy
Yes.
just really needs to chill
Yes.
and the monkey's in charge.
Yes.
So how does that manifest? What do you see? Like, what are some of the things that you
What
see
are the
parents doing?
mistakes?
And what could they do instead?
Yes. So, for example, and honestly, I tell people, like, listen, as a parent, it is totally normal. Like all these instincts, these are our normal responses as humans, as parents. So just know that and be kind to yourself as you're looking at your mistakes. Okay. We do the best that we can with what we know at the time. Give yourself grace.
Maya Angelou said it best. You got it. You do the best you can with what you know. When you know better, do better.
Right. So one of the first mistakes is trying to logic or reason with our kids. And so I saw this, for example, I had a mom whose daughter, after COVID, whose daughter was really anxious in social situations. And her mom kept trying to talk her through it. Like, you know what? It's fine. There's no need to worry. There's no need to be anxious. Like, she was just trying, it's all, your friends are going to be there. And she was trying to logic and reason, but things kept escalating. And so I was talking to her just about the walking through, like, you know what? And starting from a place of, it's okay to be anxious and nervous. It's fine. It's totally fine. And it's totally normal. Nothing is going wrong. Right. And just that ability to accept where they are, just once you start to normalize the fact that, like, yeah, this happens at times. And then you can start, and then what do we do from there, right? And then what? But first, let's start with, like, nothing's gone wrong. Because when we think, also, here's the thing, when we think something is wrong and needs to be fixed, that's what we're telling our kids.
Right.
Then they're like, oh, something's wrong with me. So that's that.
I never thought about it that way, but yeah.
Right. That's what we reflect back to them.
Okay.
And so that's that piece of just, like, first of all, like, making sure, like, okay, but nothing's gone wrong. It's totally normal to be anxious at time. And let's just talk about what we do when you're anxious. Okay. So that is one of the mistakes. The second mistake I see parents make is actually just trying to find a way to make them feel better. So glossing over, like, turning immediately to, like, oh, let's go shopping. Let's go get you something. Let's get a treat. Let's get some ice cream. Like,
I was going to say ice cream.
Right? Trying to find a way to just, like, let's just find a quick fix and a solution to help you feel better. But unfortunately, that also teaches our kids that things outside of them can correct for feelings. And that's when we end up with looking for, you know, needing to come home at the end of the day and, like, oh, I need a glass of wine to read, you know, to calm down, or I need a piece of cake, and, like, needing other things to try to help us feel better versus learning tools to deal with the feelings itself.
And it also strikes me that the thought that just came up, the word that I thought of as you were describing this was, like, outside validation. And having done some of the work that I've done with teen girls and promiscuity, I'm wondering, is there a link of, like, you know, if we validate the feelings of, like, it's okay to be anxious, it's okay to feel whatever we're feeling, and then give them those tools, imagine a long-term impact it could have on promiscuity, on alcohol use, on peer pressure, on all of those kinds of things. And I mean, that's, like, you know, magnitudes, but it starts with every individual kid.
It does. It does. And the ability to, I think a lot of those things manifest because kids can't deal with the feelings. They don't know how to handle the feelings. So they look for some way to manage them, and they look for something outside of them.
Right.
And that isn't necessarily healthy. So learning how to handle the feelings in a healthy way.
Feelings, we're going to get to that.
Yeah. Feelings move through us in 90 seconds if we don't resist them. But it's learning how to do that. So that's number 2. And then number 3, and this, I tell parents this, I laugh from my own story, is actually not getting defensive yourself. So, right. So this was a personal, like, I had, you know, my daughter was getting ready to go on spring break with another family, but she had to fly down separately. And we were trying to find a flight, but it was expensive. It was spring break time. And so we're trying to find a good flight. And she looked at me, she's like, "You're making me so anxious." Now, in my head, I wanted to be like, what do you mean I'm making you anxious? I'm the one getting you a ticket. Like, I had all these things. thankfully, my training kicked in. It doesn't always, I'll fully admit.
Right. Because you're still human.
I'm still human. But I just said, let's walk through. Tell me more. What is it that's making you anxious? And then she was able to explain, you know what, I don't know this family as well. They're staying far away. I don't want them to have to come to the airport like an hour later because it's an hour away where they are. Like, she gave me all these valid reasons. I'm like, okay. But I had to step out of it myself, not take it personally. And then honestly, just get more curious. Like, let's walk through what this is. Let's just figure it out. Right.
And to be fair, it might have been some of your energy about the stress of the cost that she was picking up on as well. But I think it's important for us to remember that, yes, I may be contributing in some fashion, but there's always something else going on. Like, how egotistical of us to think that we're the only thing that could be impacting this other human, this other being. You know what I mean?
Right. And so
all right.
Yeah, that's number 3 is an important one for parents of teens.
Well, especially as their sass tends to kick up, which is appropriate as they individuate, right? Like, them being little bleeps sometimes, like, that's part of the growing process. And if we can, as the adults, step back and be like, wise owl's not there yet.
Wise owl's not there. Don't take this personally. And
I think making sure that we keep our own wise owls engaged, because the defensiveness is
back here.
Right. So we're the ones who have the prefrontal cortex. Let's do what we can to keep it online.
Yes. And I just tell parents, I said, keep in mind, defense is the first act of war. So when you get defensive, things are automatically very likely to escalate.
To escalate. Right. I love that. All right. So what are some, I know we've talked about, like, you and I have talked a lot about normalizing, talking about this, being open about it. Like you're saying, digging into it, getting curious, exploring kind of what's underneath. What else can we be doing maybe to normalize? And then what can we do as the adults to help keep our prefrontal cortex, to keep our wise owls in the tree, despite the barking puppies?
Right.
They're also going to help the kids.
Right. So the first thing that I want to make very clear, and just helping like around this in general for both the teens and the parents, anxiety is a feeling. It is a feeling that results in this physical response in your body. Okay. So anxiety is something, I am experiencing anxiety. Anxiety is not your identity. Okay. Too often people start to take that on, they become an anxious person. It becomes who they are. And so if we can help our teens remember, like, no, this is just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It'll pass. It's not who you are. And like, instead of saying I'm anxious, well, actually, instead of saying you're anxious right now, just you're experiencing anxiety. It's just a feeling. It's okay. Right. Just really making sure to separate those two. So it's not something that they take on for life.
Right. Right. One of our other guests and trusted experts, Fran Gallagher, was talking about supporting kids in designing their own worlds rather than trying to impose worlds on them. And one of the distinctions that she made is an eating disorder versus disordered eating. Right? Like the first, it ties right into what you were saying, is an identity. I have an eating disorder. I am anxious.
Right. As
opposed to my eating is disordered. It's a behavior, and behaviors can be changed, and you're saying, I just totally lost it.
Anxiety is a feeling.
Right. I'm feeling anxiety versus I have anxiety.
Yes.
Two different perspectives, and semantics matter.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Okay, great. So huge normalizing there.
Yes, that's just one thing that I think is really important to help our kids understand. And just from a deep level, like, no, this is just, it's a feeling. It's going to pass, just like you get angry, just like you get, happy, excited, all of those feelings, disappointed, like they come and go. They all come and go. Okay.
So how do we mitigate them?
How do we mitigate them? All right. So it comes down to literally that ability to calm that nervous system. Okay. So it's literally the sympathetic is like the stress response. So I think S for sympathetic. Parasympathetic is more peace. That's rest and digest. But that we want to get to the parasympathetic.
Right.
There are different ways to do that. The easiest way, honestly, is to tap into your own breath. You can use that in any single moment, anywhere you are.
Yeah.
And I always tell parents, I said, just put your hand on your chest. When you put your hand on your heart, your body actually releases a hit of oxytocin naturally. So it's like a little feel good. You give yourself a boost. So you put your hand on your heart, take a deep breath.
So if y'all see me walking around like this, like forever, that's why I'm getting that oxytocin.
Yeah, I do this a lot when I have a lot going on. I will just, you'll watch me walking around like this all the time. I'm like, take a deep breath, put my hands on my chest, right? And so
I actually had a therapist tell me also that ice on the chest can be helpful too for soothing. I don't remember why, but it makes sense. Like even pressure there just feels good.
Yeah, it does. It's comforting, right? Kind of like giving yourself a hug. Yeah. Right. Awesome. And so the other thing I will do, and I do this in coaching sessions, is I have people, I've had somebody tell me it feels like there's an elephant on my chest. Like, okay. Well, I said, I just want you to close your eyes. I want to imagine that a bright, sparkly white light is coming from above. And you're going to breathe in the white sparkles, and it's going to go surround that elephant. And it's going to start to like infiltrate. The sparkles are going to start to go in. And then as you breathe out, black smoke is going to come out, and the elephant's going to get smaller and smaller. Just keep taking deep breaths and let that light work in. Let the elephant get smaller and smaller and broken up. Keep breathing out the black smoke, and that's just all the anxiety just going out as you go. So it's just like a process of like breathing through it. And then the other thing, honestly, as a parent, it's that idea of co-regulation. Whichever emotions are contagious, right? And whoever has the stronger emotion is likely to win. So
insert 3-year-old toddler or 13-year-old teenager here.
Exactly. And so if you can just really work on having the stronger emotion and to actually have that peace and calm yourself and work on bringing your child back to you versus you getting anxious with your child.
So much of this I could have used 30 some odd years ago. Just saying.
Me too. Trust me.
Right? Yes. Right. Awesome. We've covered a ton of ground, starting with the brain and such. Actually, can I ask you, I know this from my own experience, having experienced anxiety, felt anxiety. I need to work on that language myself. So we talked about like in the brain, what's going on. What are some of the most common ways that it can present in the rest of the body that can help parents tune into like when a kid's having an anxious moment or an anxious day? Like my stomach is upset or I'm having a hard, like what are those kinds of things that are happening that can clue us in?
So when you think about the fact anxiety is when the monkey's in charge. So if you see your child is like, if they're short with you and short tempered, and so that's that fight response, right? If they're snapping, okay, that could be their own anxiety. That if they withdraw, they're really quiet, like that's
right.
They're glazed over. So when you start to look at some of the other things, that's where it's like, what else deeper is going on?
Got it. I've also heard, I know a friend of mine's daughter dealt with some anxiety related challenges post-COVID, going back to school, those kinds of things. And a lot of times what she would say is my stomach hurts, my tummy hurts. And I know like for me, when I get anxious, I get that like pit in my stomach. And now with my wise owl, mostly online, I can be like, oh, that's not actually a stomach ache. That's anxiety kicking in about whatever. But sometimes the kids can't differentiate that.
It is, it's a physical response.
Right.
That can manifest different ways in someone's body.
Mm-hmm.
So for some people, it is the elephant on the chest. For other people, it's the pit in their upset stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if a child hasn't started, like, this is why I start working on parents, like teaching children at a young age
Mm-hmm.
about feelings and what they actually feel like in their body. So when it comes up, they know. And so those are just conversations to start to have with kids. Like, all right, like what else is going on? What's going on? Why do you think, like, is there something going on that you think might be causing that little pit in your stomach, upset stomach?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's starting to just kind of get curious and ask questions, and also start to identify other times where they know they're anxious. Talk to them about how it feels in their body. Okay.
Right.
How does it feel right now? You're anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a pit in your stomach? I know when I'm anxious, sometimes I feel like I have butterflies in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about how it feels to you, or I feel like I have an elephant on my chest and it's a little hard to breathe.
Right.
So as you start to identify the feeling with how it manifests in the body for different things, like anger feels like a pinball machine with balls going all over all the time. And like, I see
Mm-hmm.
red. And so it becomes, you start to put words to what it feels like in the body so they can start to make those connections.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But before we do, I'd like to, whenever I remember to do this, I like to ask our guests which of the foundations of connection resonates the most with them. So I know, Mel, you've seen these before, but for folks who haven't, I'm going to run through them real quickly. They're very simply, the first letter of each phrase spells out connection. If you want a copy of this, they are downloadable for free right on our website. You can take it and like tack it on the refrigerator, assuming a magnet still works on your refrigerator, because some of them don't. But here's the foundations of connection. Create a safe place, observe, non-judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity, which I actually heard you say get curious earlier, take your time, innovate, own your own story, as in like how you show up in the situation, and nurture. So which one's popping for you today, Mel?
Well, honestly, it's a tie between the curiosity and own your own story. Those are the two that I really promote as parents. Just like, don't assume you know what's going on. Stay curious, ask questions, and then also own your own story and like your own storyline that you're telling yourself that does affect how you show up and how you parent.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows up in how you human.
Yes.
To use a friend of mine's term, it's just like, I don't human that way. Oh, wait, maybe I do human that way, but I can change if I don't want to human that way. So,
right.
Awesome. This has been great. And for anybody who is a member of Parent Tween Village, or if you ever choose to become a member of Parent Tween Village, Mel and I are going to go over there and we're going to have a conversation on how to deal with your own anxiety, which is why I'm not surprised you said own your own story. Taking a look at like how this shows up for us as the adults in their worlds. Especially when we have a parent, an anxious teen. If we're anxious and they're anxious, what a recipe for success, right, Mel?
Right, exactly.
All right. Well, we're going to head out. Mel, thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in Parent Tween Village shortly.
Thank you.